All right, well, since Barbara's going to open up for us, I think we should get started because we're 5 minutes in. That would be great. Margaret, do you want to kick us off? Or Barbara, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to this panel session titled Supporting the Insurance Industry in a Year of Crisis and Disruption. My name is Barbara Ingram, and I'm Managing Director of Excess and Surplus at ISO, a Verisk business. I'm also part of the leadership team for the Women in Insurance Initiative, and I'll be moderating the session this afternoon. Since this is a virtual conference, it'd be really great if we did two things. If we could have everybody sort of chime in on the chat, it would be great to know who you are and what your role is, and it would also get you all sort of warmed up and ready to ask questions on the chat later. So before we turn to the panel, I'd like to take a moment to introduce you to the Million Women Mentors Women in Insurance Initiative. Insurance is a vibrant industry in the U.S. financial services sector, employing 2.8 million people in 2019. And women make up over 60% of the industry. However, women hold only 19% of board seats, 11% of named insider officer positions, and 12% of top officer positions. And in 2016, women in insurance earned 62 cents for every dollar earned by men, compared to 81 cents on the dollar for the US as a whole. With the intent of doing something about this, the Women in Insurance Initiative was created. The mission of the Million Women Mentors Women in Insurance Initiative is to increase diversity and inclusion in the insurance industry and promote insurance as a desirable, stimulating, and opportunity-rich industry for women. We do this through action, data gathering, mentoring, maximizing the potential of our talent, and communicating our results. The mentorship mission is especially important as we look to bring more girls into STEM careers, including the actuarial, IT, and data science skills that are critical to our industry's future. If you'd like more information about us, you can find it on the Million Women Mentors homepage. So moving on to today's session. The insurance industry has shown good resilience in the face of COVID. Employment has held steady, and most companies were able to transition to remote work with little or no difficulty. As an industry, we are fortunate to be in this position. But having weathered the initial storm, where do we find ourselves now, 7 months into remote work and disrupted team dynamics? Companies have noticed an increase in productivity, but what about collaboration and innovation? And what is the impact on our broader aspirations? How do we keep building for the future, stay focused on parity goals, support our people, and attract new talent? These are some of the questions that we'll address today. So let me introduce today's speakers. First, Dr. Leroy Nunnery, founder and principal of Plus Ultra, LLC, who will talk to us about justice and equity, driving a call to action to create more diverse, equal, and inclusive work environments. Next, Catherine Lamson, who heads our WII States Committee, will address acceptance and support, reimagining the way we work and the diverse needs of employees who are managing life-work balance, loneliness, and an adjustment to a virtual world. And then Margaret Ressi-Milkent, the chair of the Women in Insurance Initiative, will talk about growth mindset and the importance of STEM, solidifying the future of the industry with the next generation of employees and the tech talent needed to advance the insurance industry's ability to better serve its customers. So we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So we'll ask you to type your questions into the chat box, and you can either do it as they come up or during the Q&A session at the end. So with that, let me turn it over to our first speaker, Dr. Nunnery.
It'll help if I unmute, huh? Hello, everybody. I just made it by the skin of my teeth. I tell you, I think like everyone, and we can go to the next slide, please. You know, we are all Zoomed out, WebExed out, etc. And, you know, the reason why this very first note here is up is because we realize that COVID-19 has really made each one of us vulnerable to something that we can't see. You know, just like bias, just like racism, just like any other ism, this pandemic has affected each and every one of us in real ways, either because it's somebody that we have lost, or in my case, realizing and knowing that there are people I cannot see. I can't get close to them because I'm afraid that they might infect me or me them. And I think it's this environment, this sense of a disconnect while we're all connected technologically is really quite ironic. It's going to take a lot of courage on all of us, all of our parts to undertake this mission of being able to step up and to be involved. One of the things I've been telling folks as I've talked to them about diversity, equity, inclusion in this environment, not that it wasn't complicated before, but now it's even more heightened for reasons of urgency and emergency, is that diversity, equity, and inclusion shouldn't be seen as a responsibility, an onus, a burden, but truly an opportunity to change the way that we live. You know, it's fascinating because I think we are all in this environment trying to find justice, fairness, and equity no matter what we're trying to do. And it affects the way we measure performance. So I noticed today an article on that had come out about Starbucks, where they are linking pay to increasing diversity, where they are truly going forward with anti-bias content embedded in all of their training, regardless of what missives may come out of Washington, and that they're ensuring mentorship for all of their underrepresented groups to make sure that there's somebody senior connecting to them. So performance measurement is critical. Compensation, pay inequity is becoming an even more obvious issue to wrestle with. But more important to me is who gets access. You know, we're going to be finding, as we see already, that there are numbers of individuals forced out of jobs because of the pandemic, but also trying to regain their footing. How do we make sure that each and every one of us on this line, but also those who we cannot see, who are more vulnerable than any of us, get access? It's only if we can spread this information out and reach out to as many people as possible. Let's go to the next slide. And to that end, my good friend and colleague, Susan Johnson, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at the Hartford, and I composed a question on LinkedIn to crowdsource answers. The first part was, why aren't there more Black professionals in leadership roles in the insurance industry? Now, this is something that I've studied. Other studies have been out there, but we were particularly interested in this paucity, this dearth of talent, and why it hasn't arisen not only in insurance, but other industries. And there are 6 major points that the respondents, almost 1,000 of them, came back with. There's a historical nature of insurance being biased, either in terms of its practices, redlining, or premium setting, but also in terms of who gets hired. Leadership commitment and accountability seems to suffer. So people will mouth the words, but when it comes to real execution, they fall short. There's a lack of comprehension in DEI strategies. So I can't tell you how many calls I got from folks who said, what do we do now after the George Floyd murder? But when you ask, how comprehensively are you trying to address it? That's when we started to realize there were some gaps between their thoughts and their actions. Acculturation, culture, and real conversations are important. It's not enough, and this is that access point, it's not enough just to invite somebody in the door. You've not only got to make them feel comfortable, but they also have to strive to do that. Inclusion and mobility of Black and African Americans in talent pipelines, there's been an emergence, a surge of interest in going to HBCUs, which I think is phenomenal. And I would add, Going to predominantly white institutions, majority institutions, is also important. This isn't just about trying to find a few people to fill the pipeline. It's also about socializing the information and the access. Remember, you've got a number of people, young people particularly, who haven't had anyone ahead of them go into these lofty positions that we now hold. And that ties to the very last point about exposure and sponsorship. If there's anything at all that shaped my career, I'm sure shaped all of those, the careers of all of you on the line, it's been exposure. Somebody who gave you a shot at doing something different and new, and somebody who would step up and vouch for you. Let's go to the very last slide for me. What we heard was that, you know, these actions need to need energy. And this enormous energy that I'm feeling and sensing has to be expended by each and every one of us. What's good for me is also good for you. If we can approach it that way, I think we can make real progress. We also need more research and analysis. We've got to find out what's working and what is not working, and then why. Dialogue is critically important. With a number of you on the screen as speakers, I've had some dialogue one way, shape, or another. It's been fabulous. I want to accelerate that. I want to promote that, and then make real commitments to take action. I want us to be measured by what we do, not just what we say. So this conversation is important. This conversation, more importantly, is what we need to get going. Million Women Mentors and the Women in Insurance Initiative is at the forefront of this work. And that's why I'm glad to be a part of it. I think we've got a lot ahead of us, but we can make some real strides over the next several years. So you got a partner right here. I'm not sure who I turn it over to next. I got going here.
Thank you, John.
Catherine, it's on you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. As you can see, we still have much work to do with our initiative. You know, our insurance industry is not ripe with youthful talent. We have a very mature industry that we work in. And we have, well, let's face it, this industry came long before women got a chance to vote even. So we are very much behind the 8 ball in our industry for women, and we are trying to make up ground really quickly. Sustaining a movement during a pandemic, though, has been truly a challenge. You can change the slide. So what do you do when a pandemic is at your door? You know, we really have to dig deep and think about our industry and the women in insurance, the Million Women Mentors. As the chairperson for the state's committees, it was really my pleasure and my honor to start to develop a program in Northern New England that was really going to heighten the awareness of what's happening in our industry, what we could do for mentoring, for networking, for supporting one another. And just as we were building a great deal of momentum, the pandemic strikes. Nobody foresaw that coming. Changes happened immediately. I will tell you, we are in week 33, day 2 of working remotely. Not that I'm counting. I never expected that we would be doing this. I never really many. On Friday, March 13th, we were working in our office, planning on what was going to happen on Monday, March 16th, when we went completely remote. We were in a good position because we had the opportunity to develop a very comprehensive business continuity program, which actually had a pandemic chapter in it. So we did have some elements of how to handle this situation. Things changed for us pretty significantly with everybody working remote. I'd say we probably had 10 or 15% of our remote our workforce that was already remote and had been doing it for many years. However, the insurance company was not remote. And there had been a lot of talk over the last couple of years about balance. balancing your family, balancing your work, and really thinking about the new ways in which we might work. And with our younger folks coming into the workforce, they are very vocal about their needs. So this provided opportunity. We went remote. We quickly learned that we had most of the equipment we needed, but we needed to really think about setting people up in their remote set room, in their kitchen, wherever it is that they worked. It needed to be ergonomically correct. Our loss control professionals and safety professionals immediately transitioned from one-on-one face-to-face meetings to what we call e-ergo. And everyone had an opportunity to video and photograph expensive adjustments to keep people safe and comfortable with their remote work. That started a great movement within the organization that we quickly transitioned to our customers. Being remote, though, has its challenges. There's isolation. There are a lot of quiet things that happen, a lot of depression and a lot of anxiety that nobody really talks about. That went to work not just for their professional development and not just for their professional development, but for their social life as well. Many of our workers got a great deal from our environment so that they could be in touch with and talking with their colleagues, whether they sat next to them, whether they met them in the lunchroom, passed them in the corridor, saw them at the water cooler. It was a rewarding experience. So it wasn't just about work. There's a great deal of socialization that goes on at work. So we've overcome most of those. Many of our policies and practices have changed. I don't suspect that we will be going back to the way it was anytime soon or even ever. I think that we will be changing how we look at work, where work gets done, and who's doing the work. So there's lots of challenges. Flexibility and communication are critically important. I recently read a survey by a commercial real estate group, Jones Lang LaSalle, and they indicated that 44% of the workers were missing being in the office because they missed their social interaction with their friends and their colleagues. I thought was interesting. You know, the scanners, we had to learn how to sign contracts, use DocuSign, and some things that required wet signatures, how to do it, how to scan things. And 29% of that group that was surveyed said they missed the face-to-face interactions. Face-to-face is incredibly important. Face-to-face is how we had always done our business. And one of the stressors that I've heard recently is we're face-to-face. I mean, you can see my face at least. There's a little Zoomitis or screen thing. Virtual does support our work though. It does support our mission, and we need to make sure that we don't lose sight of what's important for our organizations as well as for our industry. So when we started this, we were well into our women's networking options, talking about STEM, introducing the movement. We had set up some really fabulous networking events with education. We talked a lot about mentoring and what the difference was between mentoring and coaching and how you could bring it to your organization, how you could support it at your organization, and how you could get involved personally. Well, that came to a screeching halt as we tried to figure out how to take it virtual. And we have done some virtual meetings, but the most important initiative that we had was we were looking to initiate at the Memic Group a mentoring program. It's something that's been talked about on and off for a couple of years. It's you know, really been top of mind for many of our more youthful colleagues and so forth. So we really were interested in initiating that program. We selected a piece of software called MentorClick. We set it all up. There's an algorithm for matching folks. We had a pilot group, and I'm pleased to say that for the last 6 months, and the 6-month trial period is coming to an end, we have had great success. So there are lots of opportunities, silver linings that you can look for. I will tell you that the matching process with our software was fabulous. We've had meetings with our mentees and our mentors. By the way, they're all women with the exception of one mentor. So the women in insurance are really doing well with this initiative. We found that doing it virtually was probably not what we would select as our first option, but it went well. We knew one another a little bit, and we had opportunities to meet on a weekly basis, talk about our objectives. Some were, how to evaluate your career development, what were your leadership opportunities, what were your development opportunities, some mental support as we go through this process. And I will tell you personally, I have a mentee. We live close enough so that there is a public school with an outside track. So social distancing, but during the nice weather, we would meet for walk and talk meetings. So we could still participate in the program, meet with one another, talk about our objectives, and support one another. So I encourage people to get involved, look for opportunities, don't be afraid. Mentoring will increase retention of the millennials, and it's going to drive cultural change in our industry, which is critically important. It's going to develop talent pools. It's going to help your mentees with their career development within our industry. Whether they stay with you or go to another insurance carrier, we're still supporting the insurance industry. It also is going to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's so critically important. So let's take advantage of all the political skirmish that's going on and make it work for us. Let's build confidence. Women need to build confidence, and mentoring will help with that confidence building. One of the things that I always think about on the next slide is a quote from R.S. Gray, and I try to live by this quote, and it's kind of typical of how I approach things sometimes. She believed she could, so she did. And that's how I got involved with this movement. I thought I could, and I knew my colleagues would support me, so I did. And I'm pleased to be here to tell you that we've had great success. So thank you all. We look forward to hearing from you. Margaret?
Catherine, thank you so much for your energy, your wisdom, your heart. That truly is the cornerstone of the Women in Insurance Initiative. We are all about action. We're holistic. We are men and women who get it done together. So I'm excited to be able to wear my talent hat this afternoon and talk about growth mindset and the importance of STEM. It has been a joy, a privilege, and an honor to bring STEM to insurance and to bring insurance to STEM. Let's take a look at the next slide. So during this time of COVID-19, growth mindset has never been more in the forefront. Those with a growth mindset are resilient. They truly believe that through hard work and strategy and input from others, that they will make a difference, that they will keep growing, learning, and their efforts are truly going to pay off. So let's take that growth mindset with us as we think about our next chapter. We think about really impacting insurance with STEM. So let's take a look at that next slide. I have some interesting facts for you. As you heard today from Catherine, and from Lee and from Barbara, there is a huge demand, a red hot demand for talent, and especially aspiring talent. Catherine was very delicate, and I'm not going to be so delicate. Insurance is an aged industry. We need fresh talent. We know that 10,000 baby boomers will reach age 65 each and every day until 2013. We know that we need to reshape and retrain our workforce because the world is changing. As Lee said, we're living our lives behind these screens. And how do we do it? How do we leverage technology and this digital phenomenon that we're all embracing? The next generation of insurance talent has a huge task, but we know that you're up to it. And we are here as leaders, as mentors, as friends, as collaborators, to be with you every step of the journey. I know that we've got a big challenge, but I also know that every time the insurance industry is faced with a big, bold challenge, we come up with an even bolder and bigger solution. And that's what this is all about. I'm excited to be partnering with all of you, with Dr. Nunnery, and talking and acting on building on-ramps for talent into insurance via STEM. So let's take a look at this next slide. And why don't you imagine with me a bit? Let's reimagine. Let's take a look at the why, the how, and the who. We want to harness opportunities provided by AI and figure out ways to create customer experience, member experience that is really going to make a difference in our new landscape. How? We want to showcase the good, the character, the honor of the insurance industry. And the who, we want to actively seek out those pursuing STEM careers. And there are a myriad of STEM careers and a myriad of ways that we can embrace the STEM talent that we so desperately need in insurance. So I've got a stat for you too. National unemployment is 7.9%. Insurance unemployment is only 3.6%. I can tell you historically that this always holds true. Insurance is resilient. There is a halo and a bubble around insurance, and I have seen that for the last 30 years. This is a wonderful time to join insurance, to come and learn about insurance if you're a career changer. So we have a lot of different ways that we can create those on-ramps, as Dr. Nunnery calls them, and it's time. One more slide. And keep imagining, keep coloring outside the lines with me. Let's take a look at next generation talent. This word cloud is just the beginning of the types of STEM careers that we offer in insurance. And actuarial is right there, as is transformation, modernization, risk, cybersecurity, analytics, and more, underwriting. This is a rich industry filled with opportunity and talent, and it's time for succession. So please join us on our movement. We have a lot of good trouble to get into. And with that, Barbara, I'll turn back over to you.
Thank you, Margaret. So remember, you can jot down your questions on the chat function. And I think I will start us out with some questions, if you don't mind. And for Dr. Nunnery, one of the challenges that we always had in this industry, all of us in the insurance industry joke about the fact that none of us got here on purpose. Most of us got here by accident. And that accident generally happens because you know someone. Do you think the fact that people don't normally think of insurance as the first thing that they want to do when they leave college is the same impact amongst the Black community, or do you think it's more impactful?
Barbara, that's a phenomenal question, because I have posed that question to all types of audiences, very diverse audiences, and I get the same response, that the industry, I believe, has a brand awareness problem. It doesn't present itself well like a Google might, or like a consumer products company. And so there's something to be said about changing the language, the vocabulary, so that it reaches folks that otherwise would not be contacted. And the crazy part is, when you look historically, and this is something many of you know I'm really hot on, African Americans particularly joined the insurance industry because there were companies owned by African Americans. You went, if you got a chance to go to college, predominantly HBCUs, of course, the only employers you might go to were those that were owned by folks of color in those communities. North Carolina Mutual, Atlanta Life, and at one point there were 52 owned companies. At one point, 10,000 Black folks worked for those companies. They had almost $304 million worth of assets. So I think, insurance in force. So I guess part of the issue is, fast forward to today, we've got to build in awareness of what the opportunities are. That slide that Margaret just showed, with the plethora of not only job opportunities, but also pathways, none of those roles are going to go away. That's the way, that's the pathway to the future. So I think if we can start introducing the concepts of what it would take when you say actuary to somebody, what do they understand? And let's not only assume that certain people can get it if they only have A's in calculus. It is totally possible other competencies could come into play. But we've got to do multiple things at one time. Ingrain this education into younger people so that they get it, but also open the doors up by internships, mentorships, apprenticeships, so that they'll have an experience. I think that's a way for us to be able to succeed. No matter what the group is, we've got to open these doors more and more wide open, for sure.
Thank you. Yeah. And Catherine, let me ask you this one. It's interesting. You talked a lot about inclusion. Now, there was always a certain level of asymmetricality. All of us have a few people, all of our companies have a few people who work from home all the time. Now we all work from home. And so that asymmetricality, when everyone's in the room and you're the only one on the phone or the video, now it's been evened out. We're all on the video. So it's kind of really two parts. I mean, do you have strategies for dealing with that asymmetricality when we do start to go back in the office? And the other thing is that, do we think we have more awareness of maybe some of the challenges that the total remote worker had back before the pandemic hit?
Say that we have experienced that in my senior leadership team personally. We are up and down the East Coast. So there were always 5 or 6 people in the room together, face to face, with a couple online. And the first thing that they noted when we were all online was, hey, we have better manners online, that's for sure. We don't over talk each other. And they feel included. They feel the inclusivity because we have now leveled the playing field, so to speak, and we're all online. So it's worked out really well. As I think about moving back to something more normal, and I use that word, but I really don't know how to define it. I think that our workforce is looking for balance. I think they want to have their cake and eat it too. So we got to figure out how to do that. We want to be able to provide remote opportunities. We also want to have opportunities for those who like being in the office. Although my guess, and don't hold me to it, but my guess is that probably half of our workforce is not going to come back to a full-time office setting. I think there's going to be some balance. I think it's going to be challenged by the education system that they're all participating in, depending on what state, which locality, whether they're in school, out of school, remote learning, part-time, full-time. It's all very different. I think that is going to have a huge impact. Of course, the virus, the vaccine, all of those things will play into it. I don't think we're going to know what it looks like. But I think for our organizations, we have to begin to think about the talent that we're looking for and the culture that they are looking to be a part of. So as we move back to whatever it is we're going to, because we're still on the journey, I think we need to be thinking about our culture and where do we put our efforts? Do we put our efforts into creating an office environment? Do we create a virtual environment? Do we try to find the balance? How do we integrate both so everybody feels success? So that communication is the same whether you're sitting there in your workstation or you're in your remote location, whether it's at your camp, your back room, wherever it is that you happen to go. Maybe you're visiting your parents in Florida for the winter. For those in the north, I vote for that. I think that we really need to think about what it is that we are looking to create and how are we going to be able to satisfy the workforce of the future. They're not the workforce of the past. Insurance has been sort of a good old boy office environment that was not always inclusive. And now it's changed. It's turned upside down and we are making it inclusive. We are looking for the diversity. We are looking for the inclusion. We're looking for the equity. We're looking to move women forward. Our industry is ripe for that. And the opportunities are there as Margaret expressed. You know, we really, I mean, look at this word board. We're ripe with STEM. We're ripe with opportunity. We're aging out. It's time to bring these new folks in.
Yeah, thanks. Margaret, I think I'll ask you to take the next question, which is, can you talk about the work that the Women in Insurance Initiative is doing to drive awareness around opportunities in the industry?
Thank you, Barbara. We're active and we need to do more. I'm going to say that up front, but our consortium members have all been pulling their resources, their energy together and saying, how do we evangelize? How do we get the word out? And Catherine is doing it through the States Committee, through mentoring, through a grassroots effort of women helping other women and young girls. We are doing it through the work of the Actuarial Foundation in the classrooms and now the virtual classrooms, teaching kids and instilling in them a love for math. That will open doors for them across all areas of STEM. These are just a couple of examples. I'm excited to share with you that we're launching a webinar series starting in December, where we're going to be creating active community activities. So we are learning, we're listening, we're collaborating with each other, and we're living our best practices. We're not just talking about them. And there's more to come on creating the on-ramps for STEM that Dr. Nunnery is working on so actively with Susan Johnson. What I love about the Women in Insurance Initiative, and I love a lot about it, is that we lock arms with our sister and brother organizations across insurance. We're all pulling in the same direction. We're sharing, we're growing, we're moving together. We aren't going to do it alone. We do it as a chorus. Don't ask me to sing though. So I am just touching the tip of the iceberg here, Barbara, but please, we welcome all of you on this session today to please join us. We need you.
Yeah, so thank you, Margaret. You know, I have a really interesting question here, which is what is the first contact youth have with insurance? Is it only car insurance? And I'm laughing because I'm enough of an industry veteran I said that politely. When I first heard about insurance, it was the life insurance salesman who showed up at your parents' door. And that was, I graduated with a master's degree, and the last thing I wanted to do was sell insurance door to door. And the idea that insurance was actually a really fascinating job was really, had no idea. I would say these days, probably watching a Progressive or a Geico ad or something like that is probably the first relationship people have with insurance, or when they buy car insurance, or when they have an accident. But what's really interesting, I have two children, and they're both in the insurance business. And my daughter's college roommate is also in insurance. I recruited her personally. And my daughter, who is the older, was very interested to get into the industry because what she saw was that I had a lot of fun, and that I knew a lot of people, and that I went to a lot of interesting events, and that I seemed to be very enthusiastic about my work. So that's the upside. We have just a couple more minutes. Margaret, I did want to ask you if you would go back to something that Dr. Nunnery said, which is that, he was talking about the, we're going to need to compete with Google and with other sorts of people for not only, the math talent, to get the math students to go into actuarial work, but to get the data scientists, which is the next big wave of where things are going in insurance, to get data scientists to think about insurance rather than automatically going to the Google booth at the college fair, at the job fair. So do you guys at Jacobson have some strategies for that?
We have quite a few, Barbara, and I'm going to say this is where we all have to lock arms. The Insurance Careers Movement is a great vehicle right now to create that rebranding, that energy around the excitement and the opportunity, and frankly, the fact that insurance is a lucrative career. We have jobs. You can do well. You can have a fun career. You can do like you did, Barbara, in your own grassroots way to be able to spread the word about insurance. And that's what rebranding is all about, getting the word out and evangelizing. And I am so happy to see so many Generation Z participants in this session. And you are our best ambassadors. So please join us. Please spread that word. It's really all the channels working together in a holistic way. I don't have one silver bullet, but I've got a lot of them. So please, we need more ambassadors. We need people telling the story. We need you to join us as a consortium member. So the invitation is here for all of you. And we do have some events coming up. We might want to take a look at that slide before we close so everybody can take a look at our key women in insurance dates. We have our very first webinar series. We're going to be talking about imposter syndrome in pandemic times. And we want you to eliminate your inner imposter. And dirty little secret, we all have one. So be with us on Tuesday, December 8th at 1 o'clock Eastern. And then we have our Q4 meeting, and I'll invite all of you to join us. This is a great way for us to wrap up 2020 and talk about the exciting 2021. And it couldn't get here fast enough. So we're here, we're making the most of our time on our screen. Thank goodness for Zoom. I'll give a shameless plug for Zoom and digital technology. It's given us an opportunity to reach and to make the impact. So please be with us.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Thank you for that. And thanks, Lee and Catherine, for your insights that you shared with us today. Very much appreciated. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. We really appreciate you as well. So I guess I will hand back to Amy and everyone. We're inviting you to the final session. Am I correct with that, Amy?
That is correct. The final session. Just wanted to say thank you to the Women in Insurance leaders for all of the work that you're doing, for hosting this webinar today. As I had mentioned in the chat, we will send a follow-up with these slides, with a recording. And yes, there is a page where we will post these events. We haven't been doing it on LinkedIn, but I think we can certainly start posting on our personal LinkedIns. And we also have a website, which is hosted by Accord. And so that's www.accord.com/WII. So again, accord.com/WII, just responding to a last question that came in about where these events will be posted. So again, thank you everyone. Thank you for being with us here today in this virtual summit, and just another 30 minutes to go, and it's going to be great. So I hope you'll stick with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.